At a family gathering, my child called me a fake father and said my ex-wife's new husband was better while I just paid for everything. So after my ex told me not to make it about myself, I stopped all financial support and she came crying. This is the first time I'm sharing this absolutely wild story that unfolded over about 8 months. I'm still processing some of the situation honestly, but my buddy convinced me to share because he said people would appreciate the justice aspect of it all. Buckle up, because this gets absolutely insane. My name is Tyler, and I'm 29 years old. I work as an account manager for a mid-sized marketing agency here in Las Vegas, where I make decent money, comfortable enough to live in a nice apartment complex and actually pay my bills without stress for once in my life. I've been divorced from my ex-wife Amanda for 2 years now, and I have a 9-year-old son named Lucas who's basically my entire world. The divorce happened because Amanda got tired of being married to what she called a boring marketing guy. She wanted to explore her options, if you know what I mean. Translation: she was cheating with multiple guys from her CrossFit gym. I caught her when she left her phone unlocked one too many times, but I could have made the divorce nasty. Instead, I kept things civil for Lucas's sake. Our custody arrangement seemed pretty fair at the time. I pay $1,450 monthly in child support, plus I cover all medical, dental, and extracurricular costs. Lucas stays with me every other weekend, Thursday nights, and alternating holidays. It's the standard divorced dad setup, and it was working fine until about 10 months ago. That's when Amanda married this guy named Kevin. He works as some kind of regional sales manager for a medical equipment company, drives a shiny leased BMW, and has that slick salesman personality that screams, "I'll promise you anything to close the deal." Think used car salesman, but with a college degree and better clothes. My best friend Marcus works at the same marketing agency as me. This 38-year-old guy went through his own nightmare divorce 4 years ago and has become like my unofficial advisor on all things custody related. Marcus has this way of seeing through people's bullshit immediately. He calls situations exactly like they are without sugarcoating anything. When Amanda first introduced Kevin, Marcus took one look at the guy's social media and immediately had concerns. "Dude, this guy's whole life is performative," he told me, scrolling through Kevin's Instagram. "Look at these photos. Expensive restaurants, luxury car, designer clothes. Either he's loaded or he's living way beyond his means to impress people." I thought Marcus was being overly suspicious at first. Amanda seemed happy enough. Lucas didn't complain about Kevin, and honestly, I was relieved she'd found someone else to occupy her attention instead of constantly texting me about minor stuff. But Marcus kept pointing out weird details that I was missing. "Look at this guy's LinkedIn," he said one day, showing me his phone. "He's been at 4 different companies in 18 months, always in sales. That screams commission chaser who can't hold down stable income." Marcus also noticed that Kevin's social media posts were suspiciously generic. "Everything's staged, dude. Look at these restaurant photos," he continued, scrolling through Kevin's Instagram. "They're always taken from the same angle to hide that he's eating alone, or he just ordered appetizers to look fancy. Check out the dates on his car posts. He only photographs it right after washing, never candid shots. This guy's performing wealth, not living it." I brushed off Marcus's observations as overthinking, but he made one prediction that stuck with me. "Mark my words," he said seriously. "The second this guy faces real financial pressure or actual parental responsibility, he'll disappear faster than free pizza at a college dorm." Looking back now, I should have trusted Marcus's instincts from day one. About 5 months after Amanda and Kevin got married, I started noticing small changes in Lucas. Nothing dramatic at first, just little things that felt off. Lucas started mentioning Kevin more frequently during our phone calls. Kevin helped me with my science project. Kevin drove me to baseball practice. Kevin thinks I should try basketball instead of baseball. It was always Kevin this, Kevin that. I figured that was normal for a kid adjusting to having a stepdad around. Then, Lucas started seeming less excited about our weekends together. He'd still come over and we'd have fun, but there was this underlying distraction, like his mind was somewhere else. When I'd ask about school or friends, his answers got shorter. When I'd suggest activities for our time together, he'd sometimes say, "Well, Kevin usually takes me to," before catching himself. The first major red flag came during a school event in October. Lucas's elementary school was having their annual science fair, and he'd been working on this solar system project for weeks. He was really excited about it, telling me all about his hypothesis during our Thursday dinners for the past month. The science fair was on Friday night. Technically, it wasn't my custody day, but Lucas specifically asked if I could come. I rearranged my work schedule and showed up ready to see his presentation. I was walking around the gymnasium looking for Lucas's display when I spotted him across the room standing next to his solar system model with Amanda and Kevin, explaining something to a judge. What caught my attention was how they were positioned. Kevin had his hand on Lucas's shoulder in that protective, father-like gesture, while Amanda stood slightly behind them taking photos, like she was documenting some perfect family moment. When I walked over, Lucas's face lit up. "Dad, you made it!" he exclaimed. But Amanda looked annoyed, like I was interrupting something important. "Oh, hey," she said, with that fake smile she uses when other people are watching. "I didn't think you were coming." "Lucas asked me to come," I replied. "Wouldn't miss it." Kevin stepped forward and extended his hand with that practiced salesman handshake. "Great to see you again, man," he said smoothly. "Lucas has been working really hard on this project. I've been helping him with some of the technical aspects. It was a cardboard solar system with painted styrofoam balls. But I just smiled and focused on Lucas, who was beaming as he explained his project to me. The kid had clearly put a lot of effort into it, and I was proud regardless of who else had been involved. What bothered me was how Kevin kept interjecting during Lucas's explanation, adding details or correcting minor things like he was the primary parent overseeing the project. Amanda just stood there nodding along, occasionally taking photos of Kevin and Lucas together. I noticed she was strategically positioning the shots to make it look like Kevin was the main parent there. The worst moment came when another parent walked over to compliment Lucas's work. Kevin immediately jumped in with, "Thanks, we've been working on this for weeks." I helped him understand the orbital patterns and proper scale measurements. The way he said "we" made it sound like I didn't exist. When Lucas started to mention something I'd helped him research online, Kevin smoothly redirected. "Yeah, but remember how I showed you the better way to organize your data?" Lucas just nodded and went along with it, but I could see the confusion in his eyes. After about 15 minutes, I told Lucas I was proud of him and said I'd see him on the weekend. As I was leaving, I overheard Kevin talking to another parent about his stepson's project and how much time they had spent working on it together. He was literally taking credit for my son's work while I was still within earshot. I also noticed Amanda was strategically taking photos that made it look like Kevin was the primary parent present. In every shot, Kevin was positioned between her and Lucas, with me either cropped out or relegated to the background. During the drive home, something Marcus had said months earlier echoed in my head. "Watch out for guys who try too hard to play dad." Usually means they're either trying to impress your ex or they're setting up to push you out. November brought parent-teacher conferences, and Amanda and I had our usual arrangement. We'd alternate who attended, and this fall was my turn. I'd been to plenty of these over the years, so I knew the routine. Show up, hear about Lucas's grades and behavior, maybe get some suggestions for helping with homework, shake hands and leave. Lincoln Elementary was buzzing with parents that Tuesday evening. I checked in at the main office, got my schedule of teachers to visit, and headed to the first classroom. Lucas's English teacher, his science teacher, his math teacher, all the meetings went smoothly and followed the expected pattern. Lucas was doing well academically, maybe needed to focus a bit more during math class, but overall I received positive reports. The last meeting was with his social studies teacher. I knocked on the classroom door and walked in, expecting the same routine I'd just completed 3 times. "Oh, wonderful," the teacher said, standing up from her desk with a huge smile. "You must be Kevin's husband. I've heard so much about you from Amanda." I stopped mid-step. "I'm sorry, what?" Her face immediately changed as she realized something was wrong. "Aren't you married to Kevin? Amanda's husband?" "No," I said slowly. "I'm Lucas's father. Amanda is my ex-wife." The color drained from her face. "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I just assumed Kevin has been handling all of Lucas's school communications this year, and Amanda mentioned her husband, so I thought, Kevin has been handling what communications?" I asked, my stomach starting to sink. She gestured to her computer screen. "Well, he's listed as the primary contact for parent-teacher emails, school events, permission slips. He signed Lucas up for the Geography Bee and student council elections. He even volunteered to chaperone the field trip to the State Museum next month." My stomach started sinking deeper. "Can you show me what contact information you have on file?" She pulled up Lucas's student profile and turned the screen toward me. There it was in black and white, Kevin's name listed as primary guardian, his phone number, his email address. Amanda was listed as mother, and I was listed way down as biological father, secondary contact. When was this information updated? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. At the beginning of the school year. Amanda submitted new emergency contact forms in September. September, 6 weeks ago. Amanda had systematically changed Lucas's school records to make Kevin the primary contact without saying a single word to me. Is there something else I should know? The teacher asked, clearly uncomfortable with the situation she'd stumbled into. Has Lucas ever mentioned anything about his family situation? About his father? I mean, she hesitated. Well, he did tell me that Kevin was teaching him to be more responsible and that his biological father was kind of absent, but still paid for things. He said Kevin was more like a real dad because he actually showed up for important stuff. Each word hit like a physical blow. My own son was telling his teachers that another man was more of a father to him than I was. I thanked the teacher and asked for copies of all the contact forms Amanda had submitted. I walked out of that building, feeling like the ground had shifted beneath my feet. The drive home was absolute torture. I kept replaying Lucas's words in my head. Kind of absent, still paid for things, more like a real dad. How had I become just a wallet to my own son? That night I called Marcus and told him everything. His response was immediate and predictable. Dude, if she changed the school contacts without telling you, she definitely changed everything else too. This woman is trying to systematically erase you from Lucas's life. Marcus came over the next morning with coffee and his laptop. We're going full investigative mode today, he announced. I've been through this exact situation with my ex, so I know what to look for. We spent the entire Wednesday making phone calls, checking every place that had Lucas's information on file. What we discovered was even worse than I'd imagined. Amanda had updated Lucas's contact information virtually everywhere. His pediatrician's office had Kevin listed as emergency contact and authorized for medical decisions. The receptionist cheerfully told me that Mr. Kevin had been to several appointments and seemed like such a caring stepdad. When I asked about the last appointment, she mentioned that Kevin had asked detailed questions about Lucas's growth patterns and had requested copies of his vaccination records for school purposes. His dentist's office had removed my notification preferences entirely. Kevin was now the primary contact for scheduling and treatment decisions. I only found this out when I called to schedule Lucas's routine cleaning and was told that the primary guardian would need to approve the appointment. The dental hygienist casually mentioned that Kevin had been asking about teeth whitening options for Lucas, which struck me as weird since the kid's only 9 years old. His orthodontist, where I'd been faithfully paying $150 every 2 months for Lucas's braces, had Kevin listed as the responsible party even though the bills were still coming to me. The office manager mentioned that Kevin had been attending appointments and asking detailed questions about treatment plans. She even said Kevin had suggested accelerating the treatment timeline, which would have meant more frequent appointments and higher costs. His baseball league had Kevin as the primary emergency contact and coach liaison. I'd been coaching Lucas's teams for 2 years before the divorce and had continued being involved. But apparently, Kevin was now the main parent contact. The league coordinator mentioned that Kevin had volunteered to help with team fundraising and had suggested switching Lucas to a more competitive and expensive travel team. His after-school program had Kevin listed as authorized pickup person and primary contact for behavioral issues. The program director told me Kevin had been very involved, attending parent meetings and even suggesting changes to their curriculum that would better prepare kids for real-world challenges. Even his public library card had been updated with Kevin's information as primary guardian. The librarian mentioned that Kevin had been checking out parenting books and asking about programs for gifted children, apparently positioning himself as a concerned parent researching Lucas's educational development. But here's the really twisted part. In every single case, I was still listed as the financially responsible party. So Amanda and Kevin got to play happy family and make all the decisions, while I continued paying every single bill. Marcus was pacing around my apartment like a caged animal. This isn't just disorganization or poor communication, he said, his voice getting more intense. This is a systematic campaign to establish Kevin as Lucas's de facto father. She's building documentation that he's the primary parent for when she eventually goes for full custody. That possibility hit me like a sledgehammer. Amanda wasn't just letting Kevin get too involved with Lucas. She was creating a paper trail to prove that Kevin was more of a father to Lucas than I was. We spent the rest of the day documenting everything. Marcus helped me create a spreadsheet listing every organization, what information had been changed, when it was changed, and what my original role had been. The pattern was undeniable and clearly deliberate. I called Lucas that evening for our usual Thursday check-in. But this time, I was listening differently, paying attention to how he talked about Kevin versus how he talked about me. "Kevin's teaching me to drive in the empty parking lot behind his office building," Lucas said excitedly. "He says when I turn 14, he'll help me pick out a good used dirt bike. Kevin thinks I should quit baseball and focus on basketball instead because it builds more character. Kevin took me to get new cleats last week because mine were getting too small. This particularly stung because Lucas hadn't even mentioned to me that he needed new cleats. Kevin says you work too much, and that's why you can't come to all my games," he continued. For the record, I'd attended every single game that fell on my custody weekends. I had only missed games that happened during Amanda's time. Every conversation topic seemed to circle back to something Kevin had said, done, or taught him. When I asked about our plans for the upcoming weekend, Lucas actually seemed surprised. "Oh, right. It's your weekend," he said, like he'd genuinely forgotten our established schedule. That conversation confirmed what I was starting to fear. Amanda and Kevin weren't just undermining my paperwork status, they were systematically poisoning my relationship with my son. Monday morning, I called my lawyer and scheduled an emergency meeting. I brought all the documentation Marcus and I had gathered over the weekend. My lawyer looked through everything with an expression that grew increasingly serious. "This constitutes systematic parental alienation," he said finally. "Amanda has made unilateral decisions about Lucas's care and actively undermined your parental involvement without your consent. This is a clear violation of your custody agreement. We filed a motion for contempt of court and requested an emergency hearing, but my lawyer also made an interesting observation. Legal proceedings take time, and Lucas's relationship with you is being damaged every day this continues," he said. "You might have some immediate leverage that could resolve this situation faster than waiting for a court date." He explained that Amanda had been using my bank account information for all of Lucas's automated payments. Orthodontist bills, camp deposits, sports fees, everything. I'd updated my banking information 4 months earlier after Amanda kept accidentally overdrawing our shared account for Lucas's expenses, probably funding her dates with Kevin. But I'd given her the new routing numbers to keep Lucas's automatic payments running smoothly. Apparently, Amanda had been too lazy or disorganized to update the payment information anywhere. She was still using my old account numbers, just assuming I'd cover the overdraft fees when payments bounced. My lawyer's suggestion was elegant in its simplicity. If Kevin wants to be Lucas's primary father figure, perhaps he should start taking on primary father figure financial responsibilities. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. Lucas had several major payments coming up. His orthodontist had a significant adjustment scheduled for the following Tuesday that would cost $150. His summer camp final payment was due that Thursday, $2,450 for a month-long program he'd been excited about since winter. His fall baseball league registration fee was set to process the following Monday for $375. His school field trip deposit was due Wednesday for $225. That was a total of $4,700 in payments about to hit my old closed account and bounce spectacularly. Marcus was grinning when I told him the plan. "Dude, this is perfect. Watch how fast Kevin's commitment to fatherhood disappears when it starts actually costing him money." But I wanted to take this a step further. I spent the next few days researching Kevin's financial situation. A little social media stalking revealed some interesting facts. His BMW was leased, not owned. Based on his posts about payment schedules, he was probably stretching to afford it. His Instagram was full of photos at expensive restaurants and bars, along with designer clothes and gadgets that suggested he was living paycheck to paycheck to maintain his image. His LinkedIn showed he'd job hopped 4 times in the past 18 months, which usually indicates either performance issues or someone chasing commission-based pay without much success. Most telling was a Facebook post from a few months earlier where he'd humble bragged about investing in cryptocurrency and building wealth through alternative markets. Translation: he was probably gambling with money he couldn't afford to lose. This guy was living a fake lifestyle funded by credit cards and commission checks, and Amanda had no idea. Tuesday morning, I was sitting in my office when my phone rang. Amanda's name on the caller ID. "Why did Lucas's orthodontist appointment get canceled?" she demanded before I could even say hello. "I'm not sure what you mean," I replied calmly. Marcus was sitting across from me eating his lunch and trying not to laugh. "They said your payment was declined and they can't continue his treatment until the account is current." "That's strange. What payment are they referring to?" Amanda's voice hit that high-pitched tone that used to make me immediately apologize for whatever I'd supposedly done wrong. "Don't play games. The $1,650 for his bite correction procedure." "Oh, that payment. Yeah, that was set up on my old account that I closed months ago. Remember? I gave you the new routing numbers back in June. Silence. You were supposed to update all of Lucas's payment information with the new account details, I continued. Since Kevin's been handling all of Lucas's medical and school communications, I assumed he was managing the financial coordination too. Kevin doesn't have access to manage your payments. Well, maybe he should. Since he's apparently Lucas's primary father figure now, it seems reasonable that he'd handle primary father financial responsibilities. Amanda started yelling about how I was being petty and hurting Lucas, but I interrupted her. I'm not hurting anyone. I just naturally assumed that since Kevin has taken over all parental communications and decisions, he'd also want to take over parental financial obligations. The summer camp payment process is on Thursday, by the way. Hope Kevin's prepared to handle that. I hung up and turned to Marcus, who was shaking his head in amazement. Phase 1 complete, he said. Thursday brought the expected follow-up call. This time, Amanda was crying. Please, the summer camp called and said they're giving Lucas's spot to someone on the waiting list. He's been looking forward to this camp for months. That's really unfortunate, I said calmly. Did Kevin offer to cover the payment? He says he doesn't have that kind of money available right now. Interesting. What exactly does a medical equipment sales manager earn? I would have thought someone in his position would have $250 readily available for his stepson's summer activities. That's not fair. What's not fair is Kevin playing daddy when it's convenient, but disappearing when it costs money. Maybe he should consider getting a more stable job if he wants to take on family financial responsibilities. The conversation continued with Amanda alternating between anger and desperation. For 2 years, I'd been the reliable provider while she and Kevin played happy family. Now reality was setting in, and it was beautiful to watch. Look, I said finally, I'm perfectly willing to resume covering Lucas's expenses once you restore my proper role in his life. Until then, Kevin can figure out how to be the financial provider instead of just the weekend fun parent. Over the next month, the consequences of Amanda's scheme began cascading in ways that were more satisfying than I could have imagined. Lucas's orthodontist put his treatment on hold, meaning his teeth correction would be delayed by months. The office manager called Amanda 5 times trying to collect payment before finally suspending services. Amanda had to explain to Lucas why his monthly adjustment appointment was suddenly canceled, and why his teeth straightening would take longer than originally planned. The summer camp gave his spot to another child, leaving Lucas confused and disappointed about why his plans had suddenly changed. This was particularly devastating because it was a specialized robotics camp that only accepted 25 kids, and Lucas had been on the waiting list for 18 months before getting accepted. Amanda had to break the news to him that his summer plans were completely ruined. His baseball league dropped him from the team roster due to non-payment, which meant he couldn't participate in the tournament he'd been training for all season. This was especially painful because Lucas was one of the better players on the team and had been looking forward to the championship games. His teammates kept asking why he wasn't at practices anymore, but the consequences extended beyond just Lucas's activities. The bounced payments triggered overdraft fees on Amanda's checking account, which created a domino effect with her other automatic payments. Her gym membership, Netflix subscription, and car insurance payments all started bouncing because the orthodontist overdraft had depleted her account balance. Amanda called me daily, cycling through anger, bargaining, and desperation. Kevin apparently wasn't stepping up to cover any of Lucas's expenses, which was creating massive tension in their household. She started leaving increasingly frantic voicemails. You're destroying your son's future over a petty disagreement, and Kevin says this is emotional abuse. Through these conversations, I started getting a clearer picture of what was happening behind the scenes. Kevin's medical equipment sales job was entirely commission-based, and his income was much more variable than Amanda had realized. His car payment, rent, and lifestyle expenses didn't leave much room for sudden $2,000+ costs for someone else's child. Even better, Amanda started letting slip details about their fights. He says he never agreed to financially support your son, she told me during one particularly heated phone call. He says you're supposed to handle all the money stuff while he handles day-to-day parenting. Perfect. Kevin wanted all the authority and recognition of being a father figure, but none of the financial responsibility. He was exactly the kind of shallow, performative man Marcus had predicted. Marcus and I started meeting for coffee every Friday to discuss the latest developments. It's like watching a social experiment, he said. Fake alpha male gets tested by real responsibilities, and his true character emerges. Evidence of Kevin's financial stress started showing up on his social media. The frequent posts about expensive dinners and new purchases suddenly stopped. His Instagram went quiet for 2 weeks, then returned with much humbler content. Working out at home instead of expensive gyms, cooking meals instead of restaurant photos, staying in instead of going out. Most telling was when Amanda mentioned that Kevin had taken a second part-time job doing weekend sales for an electronics store. The guy was scrambling to maintain his lifestyle and definitely didn't have thousands of dollars lying around to cover Lucas's activities. The impact on Lucas was becoming obvious during our phone calls and custody visits. He was confused about why his summer plans had fallen through and why his parents seemed to be fighting again. But he was also starting to ask questions that showed he was beginning to understand the situation. "Why doesn't Kevin just pay for my camp if he wants to make decisions about it?" Lucas asked during one of our dinners. "That's a really good question, buddy. What do you think the answer might be?" "I think maybe he doesn't actually want to take care of me. He just wants mom to think he does. Kids are smarter than adults give them credit for." Lucas was beginning to see through Kevin's act without me having to say anything negative about the guy. 2 months after I'd cut off the financial pipeline, the facade Amanda and Kevin had constructed began crumbling in spectacular fashion. Amanda's calls became increasingly desperate. Kevin was working longer hours, staying late at his second job, and generally making himself scarce whenever Lucas's needs came up. The dynamic in their household had shifted from Kevin being the involved stepdad to Kevin being the absent husband who was suddenly too busy to deal with family drama. I started getting a clearer picture of their deteriorating relationship through Amanda's increasingly unhinged phone calls. "He says he thought being a stepdad meant fun stuff like games and movies, not paying for expensive medical treatments," Amanda told me during one particularly revealing conversation. He never expected to have to contribute financially to Lucas's needs. But the really juicy details came out when Amanda started drunk dialing me after their fights. One night, she called at 10:30 p.m., clearly having had a few drinks and unloaded everything. "Kevin screamed at me today because Lucas asked him for $15 for a school fundraiser." $15. "He said he's not an ATM for someone else's kid and that you should be covering everything because you're the biological father." She also revealed that Kevin had been pressuring her to ask me for full custody so they could start fresh as a real family without my involvement. "He keeps saying that successful families don't have ex-husbands hanging around," she slurred into the phone. "He wants me to move to a different state so you can't see Lucas anymore." Marcus's prediction was proving absolutely correct. Kevin had been playing house as long as it was all upside, getting credit for being involved without any actual responsibility. The moment real parental obligations emerged, his commitment evaporated faster than morning dew. The breaking point came in January. Amanda called me on Thursday evening, and I could tell immediately that something major had happened. Her voice was different, defeated instead of angry, resigned instead of demanding. "Kevin moved out," she said without any preamble. I let that sink in for a moment. "When?" "Yesterday. He said he couldn't handle the stress of dealing with unresolved issues from my previous marriage. He said I was trying to force him into a father role he never wanted." "What exactly triggered this?" Amanda's voice cracked as she explained. They'd had a massive fight over the weekend when Lucas's winter jacket got torn and needed to be replaced. Amanda had asked Kevin to pick up a new one since he was going to be near the mall anyway. Kevin had exploded, saying he wasn't Lucas's father and wasn't responsible for buying his clothes. He said he was tired of everyone expecting him to pay for another man's responsibilities. "He said I was using him and that he felt trapped," Amanda continued. "He took all his stuff and said he needed space to figure things out. But I saw him post photos with some woman on his Instagram story. I think he's already moved on." Of course he had. Guys like Kevin don't reflect on their behavior or work through relationship challenges. They just find the next woman to impress with their fake lifestyle. "Amanda," I said carefully, "I need you to understand something. This situation with Kevin was entirely predictable. You allowed him to undermine my relationship with Lucas because you thought you were upgrading to a more involved father figure. Instead, you got a guy who wanted all the benefits of being seen as a dad with none of the actual responsibilities." She was quiet for a long moment. "I know," she finally whispered. "I messed up. I let him convince me that it would be better for Lucas to have a full-time father figure instead of a part-time one. I thought he really cared about Lucas." "Kevin cared about Kevin," I said. "He cared about looking like a great guy to you. Lucas was just a prop in his performance." The conversation with Amanda continued for over an hour. For the first time since our divorce, she was completely honest about what had been happening. Kevin had been the one pushing for all the contact changes. He'd convinced Amanda that it would be more efficient if he handled school communications since his sales job gave him more flexible hours. He'd gradually expanded his role by volunteering for school events and positioning himself as the primary parent contact. He said it was confusing for Lucas to have two fathers involved in everything, Amanda admitted. He convinced me that it would be better for Lucas's stability if he had one consistent father figure who was present every day, instead of you who was only around part-time. The manipulation had been gradual and systematic. Kevin had slowly convinced Amanda that maintaining a co-parenting relationship with me was somehow harmful to Lucas's development and disrespectful to their marriage. He made me feel guilty for including you in decisions about Lucas, she said. He said healthy families don't need input from ex-husbands, and that I was preventing our new family from bonding properly. This was classic manipulative behavior. Kevin had isolated Amanda from making rational decisions by making her feel like co-parenting with me was a betrayal of their relationship. What I don't understand, I said, is how you thought this would work long-term. Did you really think I was just going to fade away and let Kevin replace me as Lucas's father? I don't know, she said honestly. Kevin made it sound like most divorced fathers eventually become less involved anyway. He said you'd probably be relieved to have less responsibility, and that Lucas would be better off with a father figure who was actually present in his daily life. This was the part that made me angriest. Kevin had convinced Amanda that I was just waiting for an excuse to abandon my responsibilities as Lucas's father. He'd projected his own shallow character onto me and assumed I'd be happy to step back if someone else wanted to play daddy. Amanda, I need you to understand something, I said firmly. I will never, under any circumstances, allow anyone to push me out of Lucas's life. I don't care who you marry or what they want. Lucas is my son, and I will always be his father. If you ever try something like this again, I'll take you to court and fight for primary custody. She was crying now. I know, I'm sorry, I really screwed this up. Yes, you did. And now Lucas has been hurt by your poor judgment. He lost his summer camp, his orthodontic treatment was delayed, and he had to watch another fake father figure abandon him when things got difficult. That seemed to hit her hardest. He's been asking why Kevin doesn't want to see him anymore. I don't know what to tell him. Tell him the truth. Tell him that Kevin wasn't ready for the real responsibilities of being a father figure, and that sometimes adults make promises they can't keep. We spent the rest of the conversation establishing how things would move forward. Amanda agreed to immediately correct all of Lucas's contact information at every organization where she'd made changes. She would personally call his teachers, coaches, and medical providers to clarify that I was his father and an equal decision maker. She also agreed to pay me back $2,600 in overdraft fees and banking charges that her scheme had cost me, though she admitted she didn't currently have that money available. Then get a job, I told her. A real job, not one of your multi-level marketing schemes. You're going to learn what it means to actually contribute to your son's life instead of just finding men to pay for it. The desperation in her voice was music to my ears. Please, I'll do whatever you want. Lucas keeps asking why his dad doesn't come to his games anymore, and I don't know what to tell him. Tell him his dad never stopped wanting to come to his games. Tell him his mother made some really bad decisions that hurt everyone involved. I will, I promise. Just please start helping with his expenses again. He's missing out on everything and it's breaking my heart. Your heart? I laughed. Amanda, you spent months systematically trying to erase me from my son's life. You let your boyfriend manipulate Lucas into thinking I was just some guy who sends money. Now you're concerned about his well-being? She was sobbing at this point. I know I messed up. I know I hurt Lucas. But please don't punish him for my mistakes. I'm not punishing him. I'm teaching both of you that actions have consequences. You wanted Kevin to be Lucas's primary father figure? Well, now you get to see what that actually looks like when the guy isn't just playing pretend. Over the following weeks, Amanda followed through on her commitments. She corrected all of Lucas's contact information and made the necessary phone calls to his schools and medical providers. She even wrote formal letters to clarify the situation where needed. Lucas's orthodontic treatment resumed after I paid the outstanding balance, and we found a better winter sports program that was actually more suited to his interests than the original baseball league. The summer camp situation couldn't be fixed for that year, but we identified an even better program for the following summer. Most importantly, Lucas and I started rebuilding our relationship. It took several months for him to fully understand what had happened, but once he processed the situation, his respect for me actually grew. I'm sorry I said Kevin was more like a real dad. he told me during one of our heart-to-heart conversations. He seemed really cool at first, but then he just disappeared when things got hard. You don't need to apologize, buddy. Adults sometimes let kids down, and that's not the kid's fault. What matters is that you learn something important about people. What did I learn? You learned the difference between someone who wants to look like a good person and someone who actually is a good person. Real fathers don't abandon their kids when responsibilities get expensive or complicated. Lucas nodded thoughtfully. You never abandoned me, even when Mom was trying to replace you. I never will, Lucas. No matter what happens, you'll always be my son, and I'll always be your father. The conversation was emotional for both of us, but it marked a turning point in our relationship. Lucas began appreciating the consistency and reliability I'd always provided, instead of taking it for granted. Amanda never did pay me back that $2,600, but watching her scramble to find steady employment was payment enough. She eventually got a job as a receptionist at a veterinary clinic, ironic considering how many medical appointments she'd excluded me from, and began learning what it meant to support herself instead of relying on men to fund her lifestyle. Marcus summed up the situation perfectly during one of our coffee meetings. Your ex thought she could trade up from a reliable, committed father to a flashy pretender. Instead, she learned that real men don't abandon responsibilities when they become inconvenient. Kevin completely disappeared from their lives. He moved to a different part of the city, blocked Amanda on social media, and never contacted Lucas again. Amanda later found out through mutual friends that he'd already moved in with another single mother, presumably to repeat the same pattern of playing stepfather until real responsibilities emerged. The whole experience taught Lucas valuable lessons about character, consistency, and the difference between genuine care and performative behavior. He learned that real love and commitment aren't conditional on convenience or cost. The entire situation ended up being a blessing in disguise. Lucas now has a much deeper appreciation for what real parenting looks like. He understands the difference between someone who talks big and someone who actually shows up when it matters. Our relationship is stronger than it's ever been. Lucas trusts me completely now and knows that I'll always be there for him no matter what, even when other people try to interfere or manipulate the situation. Amanda learned a hard lesson about choosing style over substance and about letting someone else's agenda override her judgment as a mother. She's much more careful now about who she introduces into Lucas's life, and she never makes unilateral decisions about his care anymore. As for Kevin, last I heard he was still bouncing between jobs, still trying to impress women with a lifestyle he can't afford, still looking for someone else to subsidize his performance. The guy never learned that authentic relationships require authentic commitment. Looking back, the whole experience taught me an important lesson too. Sometimes you have to be willing to let things get uncomfortable to protect what's most important. I could have just quietly fixed all the contact information and continued paying bills while Kevin played daddy. But that would have taught Lucas that his real father was dispensable and that performative care was equivalent to genuine love. Instead, Lucas learned that real fathers don't disappear when tested, that consistency and reliability matter more than flashy gestures, and that some people will promise anything until it costs them something. When I think about my ex-wife trying to replace me with a discount salesman, how that salesman abandoned ship the moment real responsibility appeared, how my son learned valuable life lessons about character and commitment, and how justice was served without me having to be the villain, it's actually pretty satisfying. Sometimes the best revenge is just letting people reveal their true character when pressure gets applied. That's my story, and I hope you enjoyed watching a fake alpha male get reality checked by actual parental responsibilities. TLDR, ex-wife and her new husband tried to systematically replace me as my son's father by changing all his contact information and positioning the new husband as the primary parent. I cut off their financial pipeline, and the new husband immediately abandoned them when it started costing money. My son learned valuable lessons about real versus fake commitment. Justice was served, and my relationship with my son is stronger than ever.